Now, no pun intended, I think I painted myself into a corner here. And the reason I say that is that, and I kind of saw this coming, I don't know why I jumped right into it. I guess I saw it coming and then I forgot about it. So you could see that last time I put some, I sanded these and then I put some more shellac on them. I think they're good to go now. But the problem is I have glue surfaces here, like these end pieces. I need to glue onto here, and I don't have a lot of complex joinery, so it's just a butt joint. So it's going to have to be a good glue surface. I might drive a couple little pin nails through there. But I've gone and finished that. So if I were to do this again, I think I would finish it, and then the only part I would leave out would be the small piece here that captures those jars from the top, because that's all I would need to leave out. So I've really kind of messed up here. What I need to do is I need to scrape away the shellac. I don't think the stain part is going to cause any problems, but I have to scrape away the shellac down to wood surface. This isn't so bad. I need to do this whole surface here that can glue onto here. But I also, to mate this, I need to scrape away a portion of this. So I have to get that just right. I may, do too much and then I'll have to restain it, re-shellac it and whatnot. So maybe that's what I'll have to do, is just kind of do my best and then fix up all the joints later on. Also, I have to drill the holes in here for the handle. So I should probably do that before I do anything else, really. Get that done, because you know what'll happen. I'll forget. I'll put the thing together and then I'll be trying to drill holes with this assembled unit. Now, what to do to put this on there? I need to take a strip off of this shellac at the bottom. Taking it off isn't that hard. I've got this sander block that I've been using. This isn't wide enough because it needs to be this wide. And I just ran that sanding block. I just used my finger as a guide, ran that sanding block there. It worked fine. But a long surface like that, I don't know. I've considered putting the dado blade in the saw and just raising it just an iota up, running that across that dado blade just to take that bottom strip off of there. Yeah, so I'm kind of caught. I really want to assemble this today, so I have to get moving on a solution. But I think I'll drill these holes while I'm thinking about it. This handle is, it's sufficient. It's not a thing of beauty. I don't even know what species that is, so it's all blotchy and it didn't turn out right. But what are you gonna do? I need to get this done, get it off the bench. These little Forstner bits sure get clogged up pretty easily. So I've gone through almost all the way. This Forstner bit has a little point on it that sticks down. So I've gone almost all the way through, just so there's a hole there. Now I'm going to turn it around, drill from the other side so it doesn't blow out. Well, that one went right through. It's pretty good. A little bit of tear out there. It's not too bad. Okay, well, that's nice and tight. It's just the shellac that needs to sort of be taken down. That's tight. Could take it down a bit more because I want to put some glue in there. So you do need space for glue. Okay, that's much better. And that's good too. All right, so I need to decide which is the inside and which is the outside of these. And then I need to take some of the shellac off the bottom. It's not real hard yet, so it's gummy. It's hard to do. You can do this with a scraper thing too. There are card scrapers and whatnot. I find utility knives also work for card scrapers. That actually works really well. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, there's that. These, I have to decide which is inside, which is out. I'm holding the knife very perpendicular to the surface to make it scrape instead of cut. It's doing a great job. Of course, I could have masked this as well. That's another option. I'm taking off a wider strip than not because I can stain and shellac that again when I'm done after assembly. That's really hard on the fingers. Go back to sandpaper for this small piece. Yeah, that works well on the small piece. Combination. Take most of it off with the knife and then sand it. That sanding block, that's just a piece of 2x4 cut to the perfect size and a belt sander belt wrapped around it. It's more of a shaping tool than it is a finishing tool because it has no pad. It's not going to conform to a shape. Almost done. The problem is those fit nicely before, and now I might have made them too small. There's always a problem, isn't there? Okay, let's get together here. I'm just using a good quality wood glue, nothing special. There's no point in using my quite a bit more expensive waterproof glue for this. I'm going to put a rather thin layer there. A film is what it's really supposed to be, but I'm also going to do the mating surface. So that there's good contact to both sides of that joint. Now this is going to be a little tricky because I need to get this aligned as perfectly as possible. I can see another place I needed to sand and I didn't do. So what I'm going to do is tack this with a little nail. The glue shouldn't stick to the shellac, so I shouldn't have any issues there. But, you know, I just want the glue, just the joint to hold nicely. It's a fairly long nail. Okay, now I have to put the handle together at the same time as this. So we'll get the one end of the handle in there. I don't know that I cut this handle even proper length. So I'll need to make sure I do that when I set it. I'll set these sides parallel when I put it together. All right. Now, I'll do this surface next. Yeah, there were a lot better ways to do this than what I'm doing. Now I need to be sure the bottom 13 3/16 is the same as the top, which it's not. It's an 1/8 out. I'm going to end up trimming that handle after the fact. I can't move it for some reason. Be nice if I had another piece of wood the same width as that base part there. And 3/16. Yeah, I have a bit of protrusion there. I can flush trim that later. Then of course I'll have to stain and shellac the end of it. That's okay. Now, let's see if we can. I didn't take the finish off of this part here. I likely wouldn't use nails if these jars are a little bit heavy. They have some weight to them. So I don't want this to be compromised once it's loaded up. Okay. Now, I did say that shellac is not an especially waterproof finish, and here I'm using water to wash the glue away. And it's not that shellac will dissolve in water. It doesn't. It actually tolerates a bit of moisture pretty good, but it's not something you want to have water remaining sitting on it a long time. Okay, so you're really getting a view for this little toolbox thing now. See, that's sticking out. I've got a flush trim saw. I'll cut that off and refinish the end. So my next question is, should I go ahead and put the jars in and put the top on it? This is getting messy for a finished product to sit on. That's tight. Oh, it might be too tight. I don't want to break them. It's too tight. It's too tight both ways. I tried to make it snug, but it's too tight both ways. Oh boy, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Do I take a Dremel or something and just make a little bit of a score inside that? This way I might be able to fudge it because this is more flexible. The ends are not flexible at all. Yeah. I'm going to leave this to dry, and I'll tackle that problem another time. Okay, that's it for now. Once I figure out my little spacing problem. I could have made it another 1/16 wider, just try to fit it in there just right. What do you say that these are going to be too tight as well? It actually looks pretty good. Yeah, bends down a little bit, but again, these are small pieces. They're flexible. The latest on the grain display box, it was coming together quite nicely. I put that handle in and sanded that flush, so I had to redo that stain and shellac, but everything was coming together really nice. And then I realized that the whole thing is too small by about a 1/16 of an inch. The jars won't go in it. I had thought, well, I'll just get, I don't know, a Dremel or something and make some space in here because these pieces are thick. But it's too small the other way, and there's no play on this. And I thought, well, maybe I can shim that, and maybe I can just kind of finesse it. And then I said, screw it. I worked yesterday. I recut all my pieces, and I started gluing those up. I sanded everything and started gluing it up all over again. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this one. It's kind of a nice little box, but maybe I should get a few more strips of this and make a solid side on this, and then, I don't know, it could be a child's toolbox or something. I don't know. Anyway, I was pretty choked with myself about making that mistake, and I'm pretty sure this one has extra wiggle room in it. We will find out once I get the ends and the sides on. So that's what's going on with the box. So the latest installment of the grain sample box, I put the other end on, and I had installed the handle in that end already, so I had to glue and install it in this side as well as do this joint. So it's a little tricky, but wasn't bad. I think it lined up well. And I had to use my spreader clamp to make sure these two sides were parallel. And because I know this one's square, I squared that up with my nice assembly squares here. Then if they're parallel, then that one's going to be square too. But I did check it, and it is square. So let's release the clamps, and we'll see what we got. Got it sticking to the paper, so I think we're looking good here. I'll have to give this all another sand, clean this paper off. There's glue, whatnot. This will have to be sanded because there's glue here. Now this is, I'm doing things in a different order than I did last time. I had put the stain on before assembly, and that's a good idea because if you get glue here and then you apply stain, then the stain won't soak into the wood properly, and you'll see it. It'll be a light patch. I think we're good. I did use water to clean up glue when I was done assembling this, so I think I'm good there. The next part to install are these. So once I install these on each side, then I can stain it and shellac it again, because once I'm done finishing the box, and I'll finish these small pieces at the same time, all done, then I slide these in and capture the jars in the box so they won't come out again. You'll notice I changed my design here a little. I wanted this to be a little taller, so what I did was, instead of ending this edge there, I brought that right out to the end. That might be a mistake because it's not very strong. I can see it's kind of breaking away. And also, this is a 45, and this isn't. This is just lined up by eye. And I did that because I didn't have enough material here for an actual 45. So I just had to go to the end of the material and make that angle. That's okay. I think I'm going to round this off, though, before I do my finishing. So here we have a situation. This handle, I cut it longer than it needs to be. Obviously, you don't want to be too short. Now I need to cut that off, and I've got a special tool for that. This is an inexpensive tool. It's a Stanley 20331, it says there. It's a flush cut saw. Okay, so as you may know, most hand saws, they have a set. So the teeth actually sit in like this. So the teeth actually extend beyond the body of the saw, and that's so that the kerf that it cuts is slightly wider than the saw itself, and then it doesn't bind. Well, this has the set is all on the top. There's no set on the bottom. So in effect, this should glide along the material like this, and I can actually put my finger on it and hold it flat and cut that little piece off of there real nice. I find that it's not perfect, but it works pretty good. Just stabilize it, and then I'll cut that off. Okay, so again, I can have my finger right there. Take, you don't get too aggressive with it. It's mostly a pull cut on this saw because it's very flexible and it doesn't have enough rigidity for you to push on it a lot. Now, because I haven't finished this yet, I'm not worried about a few scratches because I'm going to sand this. But if this was finished, I could still do this. I'd put down some thin tape. I have some nice thin tuck tape kind of a product that'll protect the finish from the saw. Because there's not a set like I said there, so you can see it's not making marks. But it does, just because it is what it is, it does make an abrasion. Okay, yeah, that's nice and flush. It's almost perfect. I'll sand that a little and it will be perfect. I can feel, well, this is pretty well perfect. This joint is a little bit proud on the bottom piece. Well, it's perfect there. This side is just a touch. So I guess that bottom piece is a hair wider than these sides, which is weird because I did cut them with the same saw setting. I'll just sand that. It should be fine. I'm just about to apply some stain to this, and I've worked ahead and done a couple of things. I've applied a round over here, and what I did was I just grabbed a cover from one of my Forstner bits out of the drawer. My Forstner bits come like this with a protective cover, and of course they come in a variety of sizes. So I found the one I could line it right up with the handle, the center, and then draw a line around there to give me a guide as to where to cut that off. And I've been thinking about how to cut that off, and I didn't cut it off. I sanded it off. So you may remember me talking before about my opinion of sandpaper. Grits, 100 grit or below, in my opinion, are for contouring and shaping. And that's exactly what I did here. I put a 60 grit sandpaper in my orbital sander and I just worked to that line. The trick was it didn't want to make it nice and flat this way, so I had to massage that to make it look okay. And then I worked up 60, 80, 100, 150, 220, 320, 400. Now I've only sanded the rest of this to 220, but I've gone all the way to 400 here. I've gone to 400 along here and correspondingly on the other side. Now, why did I do that? I'll show you on the mistake box. You see the tone of this stain here. This one I didn't go to a 400 on the edges. And so you see how much darker the stain is on that edge. That's because in the end grain, the pores are more open and it absorbs more stain. So by sanding that to a 400 as opposed to a 220, that'll close up some of these pores and make it not absorb quite as much stain. I think you'll see a positive result in that regard when I stain this. I'm going to stain that right now, so we'll be able to see that. And I can feel that it's just glassy. It is so smooth. So let's get some stain out and put on there and see if my sanding trick actually worked. This is my Minwax Red Oak stain. Number 215, I think it says. Okay, so put some stain here, and you'll see I didn't sand this handle end to a higher grit, so it's absorbed a lot more stain in that end grain. I think you can see on this end grain here, it's a lot more consistent with this tone than is something like this. So let's stain this top part. I was pretty confident in this method because I've used it before. And I think you'll agree that this is the result. If you don't do this, it's a darker edge, fairly consistently darker edge where the end grain is. And this is a more consistent tone on the edge as opposed to the side grain here. So that's a really easy trick you can use to make your stain turn out much nicer, much more consistent, of course. So I'm going to stain this whole box. Oak is one of the easiest things to stain. It takes stain very well. It's just beautiful when it's stained. And don't worry about using a lot as long as you sort of wipe it off. You can really apply it thick. If you're trying to get into the corners, you can just flood it as long as you follow up with a wiping motion afterwards. I mentioned before that if you have glue, it'll disrupt your stain, and that's exactly what's happened here. A little bit of glue there. It's not bad. I'm not going to deal with that. I like staining, especially oak. Oak is so easy to stain. It's so beautiful, and it's very, very easy. I didn't wear gloves or anything, but that's okay. I was raised in an era where dirty hands were a hallmark of a hardworking person. So now you can see some of I didn't bother to sand this to 400, and so you can see how much darker that is than this, as opposed to how much more even this is with the end. All right, I've pretty well done that. Oh, there's a little corner right here. I'd like to sand that glue stain away here because it's noticeable. I'm not sure I can do that. But I will try. Yeah. My 220 sandpaper is for a bigger sander. But again, the 220, this is a 150 that I was using. It was meant to take material off, and the 220 is meant just to smooth it, take out the scratches from the 150. So let's see. Yeah, that's gone. I need to stain the handle yet. So that was good. I'm glad I took the time to do that. That's one of the biggest issues with staining is when you have a glue joint that had a little bit of squeeze out you didn't deal with. Okay, so I'm not quite done with this because I need to stain my top pieces as well. But that's easy. Oh, you caught me red-handed. I've been trying to hurry along here since I was delayed by doing it wrong the first time. And so what I did was I got a few layers, a few coats of shellac on the box. And I'm not being too fussy with the bottom. I put a layer of shellac on there just because. And I'm not going too crazy with the inside. What I just did this morning was I sanded this with a 400 grit sandpaper, and then I put a final coat of shellac on it. That final coat is not quite set, but it's getting dry enough that I can handle the box. So I was thinking, you know what, I'm gonna bang this thing together and call it done, because I really need to move on. So I'm going to put the jars in it. And I've been thinking about the order to put these. My brother said, oh, it doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do is I'll start by putting them by size. There's a lot of dust in the shop. I'll put these in here like this, and because these are round, then I'll put the canola here as well. And then the grains and cereals I'll put in here. Look at that, they actually fit. Now if these pieces go in there, I'll be really happy. They've got a bit of shellac on them. I might not have to glue these in because they're pretty tight. I just don't want to break the wood. If I break that wood, I'm in big trouble. Yeah, see, I broke it. Cracked that. So I'm gonna have to repair that now. I'm gonna do as I did before, just scrape off some of the shellac. It's still a bit sticky, so I am hurrying this part, which is a bad idea because you hurry and then you make mistakes and you mess things up. Now, these are too long, so once they're set, once the shellac is all set, then I'll have to come in here with my flush trim saw and trim them up. See that broke there. Well, that's not too bad. Now, this little piece came off of here. I'm not sure I can reattach that. It's pretty tiny. It's very noticeable though. I'll get the tiniest bit of glue that I can here. See if I can. Okay, well, that's not too bad. Now I do have to let this set. I was just getting impatient here and maybe I've messed up some of the shellac, but I have to run a little bit more stain and some more shellac because I need to trim these. I'll have to put some tape on here, so I want that to be nicely set before I put tape on here. My fingers have made some tracks in the shellac here, so once I trim this, then I'll need to stain the end of that piece and shellac it again. So we're in for a little bit more here yet. There's some tracks here, but yeah, it's come together good. The jars have more space now. They're still captive. You can't get them out anyway. The little box is complete, but there's one thing I want to do. You can't really tell how heavy it is. It is got some weight to it. And so I'm a little concerned about structural integrity. Now the handle in this piece is obviously mechanically secure there, so that's not a problem. However, the jars sit on the bottom, obviously, and the bottom is lifted by the side, and so that's a shear joint here with only glue adhesion. Now the glue is really good glue. There's a little bit of help here to hold that, but I really would like to have something there for mechanical adhesion. So what I did was yesterday I was in the store, I bought some nice little brass screws. I'm just going to drive 2 brass screws through here into there. So what I have to be careful of is this bottom piece is the same thickness as this end piece. So you can see that it's, I think that's 1/2 inch is what I milled that to. So I need to make sure that I don't deviate up farther than 1/4 inch here. And I want to make sure they're nicely spaced so that the eye isn't drawn to that in a negative way. And I think I can do that on my drill press just to make sure I get it nice and straight. But I actually would prefer to do it by hand with my power drill, just for convenience sake. The drill press is a little bit of a pain to set up that way. I'm pretty sure I could do this just fine with that little drill bit. But what I need to do is mark out the hole locations first, and then I can try to drill some nice straight square holes. Well, the hole will be straight, but will it be plumb and square with the surface? Now, this is something I actually struggle with. It's nice that this is 6 inches wide, less these side pieces, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. So what I struggle with is getting 2 pieces evenly spaced, or 2 screws evenly spaced. But I think the idea is 1/3, right? So if I put them at thirds, that's 2 inches from the edge. They'll be 2 inches apart, and that'll look just fine. So make a little mark there. This pencil is not going to actually write on the surface. It'll really just scratch into the shellac finish. And I'll try to make sure I get it right about 1/4 inch. I'll get my old man glasses here. And that's 2 inches there. Okay, so we'll try to go 1/4 up there, and 1/4 up there. Okay, now wish me luck with this. I don't want to blow out either side. If I blow out one side, I hope I blow out the top, because I don't think you'll see it. In hardwood, it's absolutely 100% necessary to pre-drill. Now my screw is 1 inch long, so I don't really need to drive that down more than 1 inch. What you can do is you can measure your drill bit up and put a piece of tape around it. That'll give you a guide as to how deep you are. The inch is about here, so there's not enough room for tape. So I am just going to eyeball it. Okay. It's always tough to drill a big hole in a nice finished project like this. It's not difficult drilling, it's difficult to have the nerve to do it. Okay, now as you know, a flathead screw has a tapered head on the bottom. Now if you're working with softwood, that tapered part will just sink into the softwood just fine. That's not the case with hardwood. So what I need to do is I need to chamfer these holes so that that beveled part will fit into the wood. You can buy a nice little drill bit like this. This is actually, the bit sits in there with a set screw, and so it's got a reamer. So the reamer will accept the non-threaded portion of the screw, and then the second stage of this actually gives you that chamfer, and these are marked. So this is a number 8, and that's for a number 8 screw. That could be put right into there, and I think I'm going to do that, to be honest. I forgot I had those little screw chamfer bits. Failing that, here's a little tool you can use after the fact. I could just put that in there and chamfer that out, but I've got the tool, so let's try it out. Be careful how much you chamfer. You might want to countersink that screw. But this case I don't want to. I want it to be fairly flush. Because these little brass screws are not very hard, you can easily twist them off, especially going into hardwood. I'll take a common number 8 steel screw, and I'll drive that in here to cut the threads and prepare the hole. And I'm doing all this with a manual screwdriver because I don't want to crack it, I don't want to strip it. Okay. And I don't think I need to in this case, but you can also put a little bit of beeswax on that. You can put beeswax on the steel screw, get a little bit of lubrication in that hole. So this will go in. I don't think the chamfer is, see, that's pretty tight. I don't want to twist that screw off. And I recommend when you're working with something delicate, you know, don't be doing this, because it's far harder to over torque something if you're hanging onto your screwdriver with your fingertips. It is pretty tight, so maybe I do need a little bit of beeswax. I think you could use paraffin, you know, at the end of a candle perhaps, or even paste wax. I have some paste wax in my bench drawer that I use sometimes for polishing the cast iron tabletop here. But I'm a beekeeper, so I'll use some beeswax. I got a little chunk here. I just put some of that in the threads of that screw, and I'll see if that helps. It's a big difference, big difference. So that is not as flush as I like. So I'll run that bit again. You can't make it shallow, but you can make it deeper. And don't torque it. You can't torque that brass screw down in there. You know, you can't just say, oh, sink it a little bit more. No, the chamfer needs to do the job of sinking that screw in. I think that's good. It's just a little proud. That's okay. So I'll get another. Actually, I want to do the steel screw first. Or did I do? I think I did this one already. Yeah, that goes in there nice and easy. And you want to match threads. Some threads are coarse and some are fine. These are kind of in between. The usual screws that I use for my woodworking have a coarser thread than this. And so I pulled out a pocket hole screw that's made for hardwood. It's not quite the same, but evidently it's close enough. Some more beeswax on this one. Okay, that's pretty nice. I think you'll agree that that's good. Now another way to space that, I guess, is you can find the center and then put the screw in the center of the halfway point. I'm not very good at all the aesthetics of this stuff sometimes. So I got my 6 inches and quarter. You can see I've got about as much beeswax on there as I can. It's not focusing. These companies that sell screws, you know, there's 5 screws in that pack. That's a ploy. Now, it drives me nuts. This hardware store I deal with, I love them, but they recently succumbed to the pressure of the bean counters. And they're buying all this stuff out of China in packages. Thank goodness they still have a good selection of bulk screws, but not specialty stuff like this. And of course the packages, you know, when you build a project like this project, for example, I need 4 screws. You usually end up with an even number. You know, you'll need 2, 4, 6, 8 screws. So if you need 6 screws, you're buying 10. And these are not cheap. These were $6 or something for these. So, you know, it's just a ploy to get you to buy more screws. I don't know. It's just the way the world's going, right? Okay, so I'm going to call this grain display box complete. That's the grain display box series. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you watching my videos, and I hope you have a really great day. Take care and have fun.